Hey class, here we are, week 3 in interpreting the scriptures. And this week you have another group assignment. And this is an observation assignment. You're going to open up the observation worksheet. Now, this time, even though you're working as a group, you're not splitting up the work. Everybody's doing the work, and then you're going to send your completed assignment to everybody else in the group, and they're going to learn from you and you're going to learn from them. But then one person will be the final editor and submit the assignment for the group. All right. So I would suggest doing it this way. You work on it all week until Friday, and that's normally when your discussion board question is due by Friday night. There's no discussion board this week. So why don't you make that the deadline for sending your completed assignment to your teammates? Then you compare yours with theirs, see what you can learn. Now, you do need over the weekend to have one more time of communication. Now, maybe some of you want to do a Hangouts, a Google Hangouts, or communicate, but you need to decide by the deadline on Monday night who's going to be the final editor who sends in the paper. Now, here's what you're doing. You're going to open the observation worksheet, and there's going to be two passages, one from Deuteronomy chapter 6, one from Proverbs chapter 3, and you are going to make observations about the text. Now, this is one of these assignments where you kind of have to be in the right mood. You want to relax because what you're doing is you're slowing down and you're just making observations about the text. Now, you don't want to be so relaxed that you fall asleep, but being all hyped up and being worked up is you're going to miss things. In fact, I would give myself several days. I would work on it and then come back to it and then come back to it because you're going to miss it if you just do it one time. So let me give you an example by going to a passage that you're not going to be working on. This is one of the passages that you'll be working on in other assignments, but not in this one. So this is the Matthew passage in the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus says, "You're the salt of the earth, you're the light of the world." Okay. Now, what you're going to do is in your reading this week, it's going to tell you how to read a sentence, how to read a paragraph, how to read a section of scripture, and what to look for. Now, what I did was I put all the things that you're to be looking for in a box over here. And I'm going to show you how to do this. Now, some of these things, the person who made this assignment had more things to look for. I crossed some of them out just because it can get overwhelming. But I do want you to look for these things. For example, repetition of words. One way an author is trying to get your attention and emphasize something is by repeating words. So when we read this, "You're the salt of the earth, but if the salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored?" I think salt is being used a number of times. So what you want to do is highlight the word salt, and I'm assuming you all have Word, Microsoft Word. You have a little highlight feature here, and we're going dark green, and you're going to highlight salt, salt, saltiness, That's the hardest one to read. It's a dark green, but you're highlighting the repeated word. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing. Contrasts. So you're going to use olive. So this is olive. Now, a contrast, a clear indication of a contrast would be the word but. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness or its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? Um, let's keep going. It is no longer good for anything except, now except is a contrast. All right. Here's the main thing. It's no longer good for anything. Oh, here's the exception. So that's a contrast. So you get the idea. You're to go through um, in the other two passages, the entire thing. And some of you may want to be doing them all at the same time. Or some of you may want to say, I'm just going to go through the whole thing. The first time looking for repetition. Second time I'm looking for contrast. Okay, what about comparisons? Are things being compared? Well, you're the salt of the earth. That's a comparison. So um, we could highlight that. Now I'm going to leave that green. You're the salt of the earth. You're the light of the world. Those are metaphors. Okay. What other comparisons? Well, you get the idea. Lists. Now, I don't see any lists here, but an example of a list would be the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness. So you would just simply highlight the list and click on underline. That would be how to identify it. Cause and effect. Now, I got to warn you here. Three of these are very similar. Cause and effect, means, and purpose. Sometimes they're hard to tell the difference. But a cause and effect would be nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but, so there's a contrast, on a stand, and it gives light to all the house. In the same way, there's a comparison. Let your light shine before others so that. All right, that's a cause and effect. It's also a purpose statement, so that it's the means. So this is a science and an art. So if you agonize over, oh, should it be purple? Should it be blue? Don't worry. I just want you to at least recognize that it's one of them. So I think it's probably most likely purpose. So that. All right, so I'm going to highlight that in gray. So then figures of speech. Well, you are the salt of the earth as a comparison. You could say it's a figure of speech too. You're salt and light. We're salt and light. So you know what? Let's let this be a comparison. That what one way to do this would be to highlight part of the word as pink. So salt gets half pink, half green. Okay. A conjunction, that's the word and. So every time you see the word and, you would just put it in italics. Okay. So word and even in here, and right here. So you would just go italics. There you go. Verbs. Okay, now in your chapter on verbs, first thing I need to say is Greek verbs are very close to English verbs, but they're not identical. There's the aorist tense and the present tense, which is different than our present tense. But we're not even going to worry about that right now. We're going to worry about these types of English verbs. This doesn't cover every type of English verb, pluperfect and subjunctives. And all right, so all I want you to do is pay attention to a handful of features of verbs. So every verb has a tense, a voice, and a mood. So the tense, past, present, future. I ran, I am running, I will run. That's the it deals with time. Voice, active, passive. Is the action being done by the subject or being done to the subject? I threw the ball. I am throwing the ball. I was thrown. Now I am passively, I am the one being thrown. Okay. And then the mood is indicative or imperative. Indicative is just you're telling the story. Jesus went to the well. He met a woman there. She gave him a drink. That's indicating what's happening. Imperative is a command. Love one another. Greet one another with a holy kiss. Uh, share your lunch. That's an imperative. Okay. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to start identifying the tense, voice, and mood of every verb. This is probably going to take you the most amount of time. You are the salt of the earth. So are, you are, so that's a, you are present, present tense. Tense. Voice is, let's look at our options. Active or passive. You are is active. Active. And is this a command or is it indicative? It's indicative. IND. So you are is a present active indicative. You want to do that to every verb. But if the salt has lost, okay, so here, has lost. Is that a past or present? That's past. It has lost. Past. Is it active or passive? Well, it is doing the losing. A case could be made, though, that it has happened to the salt. But let's say it's active. Past, active. If it has lost, is it indicative or imperative? It's indicative. It's telling the reality. Okay. So in parentheses, you're just, in essence, parsing every verb. Okay. Then let's see. Let's keep going. Pronouns. The thing about pronouns is it's easy to lose track of the antecedent. A pronoun replaces a noun. So let's see if we can find a pronoun. Well, now you are the reader, so that's a pronoun, but let's not worry about it being a pronoun. You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its, what is its? Well, its is referring to salt. SALT. All right, so now we've identified the pronoun with salt. How shall its saltiness be restored? It. Now, if the pronoun continues to be used throughout the sentence and the next sentence, I don't think you need to put the antecedent in there every time, because it would be so repetitive. But it's there is salt. Okay. Then there's emotional terms. Now, in some cases, you can just tell there's an exclamation point. I don't see any highly emotional terms here. Question and answer. There's actually a question here. You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? So a question is being asked. So I'm going to identify that as a question The interesting thing is, um, it doesn't answer. This question is not really answered. How do you restore salt? Well, you can't. It's no longer good for anything. I guess that's an answer. Let's at least identify it as an answer. We can debate whether it's an actual answer or not. See, this is somewhat subjective, um, but question and answer. Okay. Then emotional terms, question and answer, dialogue. So if you have Jesus talking with the woman at the well, you could mark that in yellow. We already talked about means and purpose, purple, gray, blue, pick your color. Um, I'm not even going to have you do this, but general to specific. Later in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, "Don't do your righteous deeds before men to be seen by them." That's the general statement. Specific example: don't pray to be seen, don't give to be seen, don't fast to be seen. That would be an example of a general to specific. Specific to general would be if Paul says, "Don't do this, don't do that," and here's the reason why. So that would be the opposite. I'm not even going to have you look for those. Conditional clauses are if. So let's see. I think if is here somewhere. If it loses, okay, so here is if. If indicates a condition. And now we're going to go to the font itself and make it red. Did it work? The font should be red. There we go. Okay, so that's a lot of work, and like I said, it's going to take some time to do this. Slow down, take a couple days to do it, pass it to the other people in the group, and then they may catch things that you missed. Have one final editor put it all together. Now, you also want to make comments on the tone of the passage. Is it happy? Is it sad? Is it a rebuke? What is the tone? Here, it's exhortation. It's Jesus telling you to be salt and light. Connection to other paragraphs or episodes. How does the passage connect to the one that precedes it and the one that follows it? So read the previous and then the next one, see what the connection is. Shifts in the story. Now, this isn't really a story. In a historical narrative, this would make more sense. Interchange. Does the passage shift back and forth between two scenes or characters? You not here, but when you see Peter and Judas, Peter denying that he knows the Lord, Judas doing what he's doing, there's shifts back and forth. Chiasm. Does the passage have any chiastic arrangements? Now, this is really pretty complicated for our level, but sometimes a passage will have an A, B, C, a clear 3 points, and then it goes back and repeats those points. Don't even worry about chiasms right now. Inclusios, those are a little bit easier. Does the passage open and close with similar statements or events? So we don't have an inclusio here, but right before it, if we go to, I'm going to go to eSword, the Beatitudes begin with, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And you read all the Beatitudes, and then the last one says, "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." This one starts with the kingdom of heaven. This one ends with the kingdom of heaven. An inclusio is a beginning and an ending, so all the material in between there is related. That's what an inclusio is. And then the final thing you want to do, note anything surprising you noticed in the passage, possibly for the first time. So you've spent all this time picking through, what did you notice? Did anything stand out? And between your whole group, hopefully you've discovered something amazing about the passage. Let me go back to our class. there is an interpretation quiz. It's a 10-point quiz. Um, Boy, it's not hard, but I took it and I didn't do well. So just keep this in mind. It's 10 questions. It's going to ask you a question about a passage. Is it asking you to interpret the passage, or apply the passage, or just observe the passage? Those are the three things to keep in mind. Am I observing, interpreting, or applying? Ask those questions before you answer. It's 10 points. You'll do all right. And then there is no discussion board this week, so we'll see you next week if I can turn this off.